know enough to get ourselves in trouble. So if you've heard about lobelia being dangerous, this is, by the way, lobelia inflata. That's the Latin botanical name. And uh, there are a lot of species of lobelia that are used medicinally for various different things. And this one is lobelia inflata, and it's called that because it has an inflated seed pod. It's kind of a fat little balloon-shaped seed pod, and so that's lobelia inflata, the inflated lobelia, as opposed to the other ones whose seed pods are skinnier and not blown up like that. So if you're wondering about that. And there's been some misinformation going around that is still found, unfortunately, in some books and articles that lobelia is very dangerous. It's a toxic poison. It can kill you, and it actually has killed some people, and by the way, it hasn't. And sometimes they mention, if they've done a little bit of homework, but not enough, that earlier last century, actually it's 2 centuries ago now, back in the 1800s, someone was actually put on trial for murder for poisoning someone with lobelia. And what they don't tell you is that during the trial, the chief witness called by the prosecution, I don't know how they could be this dense, but the chief witness called by the prosecution to testify that there was a murder was the murder victim himself. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, their case, didn't it occur, or even into the courtroom? I mean, if the murder victim is standing there testifying, obviously there was no murder. So he got up and testified, and he said, yeah, this guy, and by the way, the man was Samuel Thompson. He made a whole career out of healing people with lobelia and cayenne pepper. He would give them enough lobelia to be an emetic, which would make them throw up and have some diarrhea if you gave them a lot. And by the way, most people don't take enough to do that, and most herbalists don't recommend it unless you really, really are in dire need of something like that. But everyday normal use of lobelia does not do that. So he gave him enough, a large enough dose to make him throw up, have some diarrhea, and purge him out. And that's how he would cleanse people. He was a very simple person, and he didn't have a lot of high education in herbs. He didn't have any medical training. He just learned these techniques from a housewife who learned them from an Indian medicine man. And he couldn't admit where he learned it from, because back in that time, unfortunately, both Native American peoples and women were not very highly thought of. So he couldn't admit where he learned it. He just had to say, well, I just, came across this information, and I just learned it. Can't tell you how it's classified. If I told you, I'd have to kill you. But I don't think he said that, but he couldn't tell anybody, and they'd just laugh him out of town if he had, unfortunately. And so he actually made a whole career out of cleansing people with lobelia, and then he would build their system back up with cayenne pepper, which is strengthening, and it builds the circulation. It helps the body regenerate and recover from illness and from weakness. So he would purge them with lobelia, build them up with cayenne, and it's estimated that he helped about 250,000 people get well in his lifetime just using those two herbs, and they worked fantastic. And they still do, and they're great herbs. I always recommend that you know how an herb acts and what it's going to do before you use it. I think that's really important. But so he was using the cayenne and the lobelia. He gave the lobelia to this gentleman. He purged him out, and then he started giving him the cayenne. Someone heard about, he had an unpleasant experience, and decided to put Samuel Thompson on trial, have him arrested, put on trial. And they called this man up to the stand and said, all right. And the judge thought, the judge, his jaw kind of dropped, and he was like, this is the victim we're talking to, correct? And the prosecutors, yes, this is the victim of the murder. Well, maybe it was just attempted murder, as he's standing right in front of us here. And so the judge was like, oh boy, where's this going? And so when he started testifying, and the prosecutor asked him what happened, and he said, well, I took this herb, and I just felt really sick, and I started throwing up all over the place, and it was just awful, and I felt miserable. And so The judge said, "Well, really? I mean, that's serious enough. If he gave you something that made you sick, well, let's throw the book at him. You know, case closed." But then the witness said, "Now, well, hold on a minute. Wait. Let me tell you the rest of the story." And he said, "After I threw up, I think I had something in me that was making me sick, because after that stuff made me throw up, I started feeling wonderful, and I've never felt so good in my life. And my disease was gone in a very short time after that, and I have energy, and I can walk, I can run, and I have clear thinking, and I just feel terrific. And I think I just needed a little purge like that, and it did it, and now I feel great." And so the judge said, "Case dismissed," and quit wasting my time to the prosecutor. So that was the thing that happened over lobelia. They also did one study, and I love telling people about this study. A lot of times